I never imagined that inheriting a farm could feel like stepping into a nightmare. The moment I saw the crumbling fence, the sagging roof, and the wild weeds clawing their way through the earth, I felt the weight of everyone's judgment. My daughter-in-law Jessica didn't hide her amusement. "It suits you," she laughed, leaning against the rusted tractor. "You're just alike." I forced a smile, though it felt more like a grimace. Her words stung, echoing through the air like she had painted a target on my back for the entire neighborhood. She didn't know the farm's secrets. She didn't know what I was capable of. The first day was a blur of dust, splintered wood, and the scent of dry earth. I wandered through the fields, noticing the cracks in the soil. But something was strange. Beneath the rough surface, there was a firmness, a hidden order that no casual observer would see. My hands brushed the earth, and a shiver ran down my spine. It was alive in a way that spoke of hidden care, of old magic embedded in the ground. By the end of the day, while Jessica shared a smirk over wine with my son, I stayed behind, kneeling in the dirt, whispering encouragement to a farm that had been waiting for someone who could truly see it. I didn't just inherit a broken-down farm. I inherited a secret, and soon, that secret would make everyone, including Jessica, look at me with a very different kind of respect. The next morning I returned to the field before the sun had fully risen. The chill of dawn bit at my fingers, but I barely noticed. My eyes were drawn to a patch of earth that seemed too even, too deliberate, like a puzzle piece waiting to be lifted. Kneeling, I dug carefully, feeling the soil shift under my hands, and then I found it, an entrance, almost invisible, covered by tangled roots and vines. I pulled them aside, revealing stone steps that spiraled downward. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and exhilaration. I descended slowly, the air growing cooler and scented with something faintly sweet, like crushed grapes. The walls opened into a cavern that was nothing short of extraordinary. Rows of grapevines climbed in perfect formation, leaves shimmering under a soft, hidden light. It was a sanctuary built for wine, untouched for decades. And the wine. Oh, the wine. Bottles lined the walls, each labeled with intricate handwriting, recipes for flavors that seemed impossible. Some promised sleep, others sparked fleeting courage or ignited passion. It was like the land itself had whispered its magic into these bottles, waiting for someone who could understand. I felt a thrill I hadn't known in years. The farm that Jessica mocked was more alive than she could imagine. Her laughter echoed in my mind, sharp and cruel, but it fueled me. I smiled to myself, tasting the first drop of a golden wine meant to calm restless nights. It was perfect, smooth, and infused with something that made the world pause just for a moment. This was more than a farm. It was power, hidden beneath dust and decay. And soon, everyone who doubted me would realize that I wasn't just like this farm. I was its master. I spent the following weeks almost entirely underground. My days above ground a careful performance of someone trying to tame a failing farm. Jessica's smug comments and my son's hesitant concern barely penetrated my focus. Each morning I rose before dawn, inhaled the crisp country air, and disappeared into the hidden vineyard. I studied the vines, tasted the wines, and experimented with combinations, discovering how the different grapes produced effects beyond anything I had imagined. The first success came with a deep red blend. It was intended to awaken courage, a fleeting but vivid boldness that made your heart race and your mind sharp. I tried it cautiously, and the effect was immediate. Clarity, warmth, a spark of daring I hadn't felt in years. I laughed softly to myself, thinking of Jessica laughing at the pathetic old farm lady. If only she knew what I held here. Then I moved to a bottle labeled Restful Sleep. The aroma was heady, almost hypnotic. I poured a small amount and felt it coat my tongue like velvet. That night I slept for hours in a way I hadn't since before the stress of city life had buried me. When I awoke, the world felt different, more vibrant, more alive. And I knew this wasn't just wine. It was a secret weapon, a gift the land had been waiting for me to unlock. I started to map out the hidden vineyard, noting which grapes were strongest, which blends had subtle effects on mood and energy. There were hints of passion, joy, relief, even quiet euphoria. It felt almost unfair how perfect it was, this hidden treasure beneath what everyone else saw as failure. I could feel the farm waking up under my touch, responding to care that Jessica's scornful eye could never inspire. Meanwhile, life above ground continued to unfold like a dull comedy of errors. Jessica strutted around, flaunting her perceived superiority, oblivious to the treasure I'd uncovered. She mocked my tired clothes, my hands scarred from labor, the way I smiled quietly to myself while she posed for the perfect Instagram photo. I listened, observed, and smiled, because every laugh she threw my way was only sharpening the edge of what I was about to accomplish. The turning point came unexpectedly. A neighbor stopped by under the guise of casual conversation, curious about the inheritance disaster. I invited her in, discreetly serving a tiny glass of my experimental blend. Within moments, her posture changed, her eyes brightened, her laugh turned genuine. She leaned closer, whispering, "I don't know what you did, but I feel amazing." I realized then that I didn't need to hide anymore. I had power here, quiet, unassuming power that could shift perceptions, open doors, and, most importantly, turn ridicule into awe. I smiled inwardly, thinking of Jessica's smug, infuriating laughter. She had no idea that the farm she mocked was about to make her world tilt ever so subtly in my favor. By the time I went to bed that night, I wasn't just a woman inheriting a broken-down farm. I was a woman armed with secrets, with magic in the form of soil, grapes, and wine. And I was ready for the moment when the world, and Jessica in particular, would notice. By the time the first golden leaves of autumn began drifting across the farm, I had a rhythm no one suspected. Jessica continued her small displays of superiority, hosting brunches with neighbors, her laughter ringing across the property like nails on a chalkboard. She still believed the farm was a joke, that I was helpless, but I moved quietly, deliberately, letting the vines and wines do the work I was too patient to rush. It started small. I invited a few neighbors for harvest tasting, a casual event I framed as trying out the fruits of the farm. I served wine in delicate glasses, noting their reactions with careful attention. A sip here and there, and the changes were subtle but unmistakable. Smiles lingered longer, eyes sparkled with curiosity, conversations flowed effortlessly. A quiet courage settled over the timid. A hush of calm soothed the anxious. By the time they left, they were buzzing, not just from the wine, but from a sense of wonder, a taste of something extraordinary they couldn't name. Word spread, not loudly, not brashly, but like a secret river carving its path through the community. People began to seek me out, not just for advice on farming or gardening, but to experience the wines that seemed to hold small miracles. I stayed patient, observing Jessica's baffled expressions when neighbors started praising me, complimenting my insight, asking for guidance. She tilted her head in disbelief, her lips pursed, her confidence shaken by a tide she couldn't yet name. Then came the evening that truly shifted the balance. My son had a small dinner party at the farm, a casual gathering with Jessica's friends. I had prepared a special batch, a deep crimson wine that inspired clarity, courage, and a warmth that lingered in the chest long after the last sip. As they all tasted it, I watched subtle changes ripple across their faces. Shoulders relaxed, laughter became unforced, eyes met with admiration rather than judgment. Jessica's smug superiority faltered under the quiet transformation she could neither control nor explain. I stayed in the background, observing the moment, savoring the subtle victory. She caught my glance briefly, and I saw the flicker of fear that the woman she thought she could dismiss had quietly grown far beyond her expectations. Jessica had mocked me, laughed at my inheritance, but she hadn't accounted for the resilience, the insight, or the patient strategy I brought to the farm. She hadn't realized that beneath the dust and decay, there was a living, breathing power waiting to be awakened, and I had awakened it. That night, as the last of the guests departed, leaving the farm cloaked in moonlight and the scent of crushed grapes, I walked through the hidden vineyard. The vines seemed to hum beneath my fingers, alive with gratitude, alive with magic. I poured myself a small glass of the crimson wine and tasted it slowly, savoring the warmth spreading through me. This was no longer just a farm, no longer just an inheritance. I had transformed it into a force that reflected who I was, resilient, clever, and unyielding. And I knew without a doubt that when Jessica finally realized the true power of this place, she would wish she had never laughed. It started with a comment I barely heard over the morning birds. Jessica had invited a few friends to the farm under the pretense of checking on the disaster. She strutted through the fields, high heels sinking slightly into the softened earth, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Still, managing, I see," she said, eyes scanning the property with an air of condescension. I didn't respond. Instead, I offered her a glass of wine, my newest creation, a blend designed to open the heart and soften arrogance. Her eyes narrowed at first, suspicion flickering across her face, but the scent was intoxicating, sweet and earthy, curling around her senses like a whispered promise. She lifted it reluctantly, took a cautious sip, and then her posture shifted. It was subtle at first. The sharp tilt of her chin softened. Her laugh became lighter, less forced, her eyes losing that edge of superiority. "This tastes different," she admitted, voice catching slightly. A flush warmed her cheeks. She tried to hide it, sipped again, and her fingers relaxed around the glass. For the first time in years, I saw her unguarded, vulnerable in a way she would never have allowed anyone else to witness. I watched carefully, savoring the small victory. Jessica had laughed at me, mocked my falling apart farm, and assumed she could intimidate me with ease. She didn't know that this farm, and the wines I had coaxed to life, were my allies, my secret army. The more she drank, the more her defensiveness melted, replaced by something I had long suspected she craved: genuine connection, even admiration, from people she had thought she could control. I led her through the hidden vineyard, revealing the stone-lined paths, the grapevines growing in perfect harmony, the bottles that promised more than simple wine. Jessica's eyes widened, her breath catching. I didn't know," she stammered, stepping cautiously, almost afraid to touch the vines. "You thought this was just a broken farm," I said softly, "but it's been waiting for someone who could see it for what it truly is. Someone who could make it alive again. Someone like me." She swallowed, visibly shaken. For the first time, she realized that the power she had assumed she held over me was gone. The farm, the wine, the quiet patience, all of it was mine. And in that moment, she understood that laughter had consequences, and underestimating me had been her first mistake. I didn't gloat. I let her process it, letting the revelation sink in slowly. I poured another glass of wine, this one gentle, calming, encouraging reflection, and handed it to her. She took it with trembling hands, and as the warmth spread through her, I saw the beginning of respect, perhaps even awe, forming in the eyes that had once only mocked me. By the time she left that afternoon, the wind carried away the echoes of her laughter. In its place was silence, deep and full of possibility. The farm hummed beneath my feet, alive and strong, and I realized something vital. I had not only reclaimed the land, I had reclaimed myself, and Jessica would never see me the same way again. By the next spring, the farm had transformed. Above ground, it looked charming, tidy, almost humble. But those who entered knew there was something extraordinary hidden beneath. I had begun hosting small gatherings, framed as tastings for the community, friends, and neighbors curious about my inherited property. The first few were intimate, private, almost clandestine, but word traveled faster than I could have imagined. Each guest experienced something different. One woman left glowing with renewed courage. whispering secrets she had kept for years. A young man walked away, laughing freely for the first time in months. The weight of worry lifted from his shoulders. Another couple, struggling with sleepless nights and tension, departed holding hands, eyes soft, voices gentle. And Jessica? She was always present, invited by my son, her expressions a mixture of disbelief and simmering frustration. She tried to play it casual, tried to maintain her air of superiority, but she couldn't hide the way she watched me, the fascination mixed with irritation that she was no longer the center of attention. I moved among the guests with quiet confidence, pouring wine, asking questions, sharing stories of the vineyard's secrets without revealing too much. Every sip, every glance, every subtle effect of the wines strengthened my presence, and I could feel the shift in the energy of the room. Where once there had been doubt, there was now admiration. Where once there had been laughter at my expense, there was awe, curiosity, and respect. The tipping point came when a local food critic arrived, invited by a neighbor who had tasted the wines. She was sharp, skeptical, her eyes scanning for flaws, her lips pressed in judgment. I offered her a glass of my signature red blend, one designed to open perception and inspire a spark of creativity. By the time she finished her tasting, she was smiling, eyes shining, scribbling notes furiously, praising not only the wine, but the ingenuity and vision behind it. Jessica's face went pale. Her friends whispered behind her, glancing at me with fascination. Every laugh, every sneer she had directed at me over the years seemed to rebound quietly, landing in the very place she least expected, admiration for the woman she had tried to belittle. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The proof was everywhere, in the buzz of conversation, in the laughter that filled the farm, in the small, enchanted effects of the wines that left people feeling alive in ways they had never imagined. The farm, once dismissed as a joke, had become my stage, and I, the woman Jessica had mocked, had become the center of a quiet revolution that no one could ignore. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the vineyard in golden light, I stood at the edge of the hidden cavern, listening to the hum of life within. The vines whispered, the bottles glimmered softly, and I felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond revenge. This was my triumph, not just over Jessica, not just over the doubts of others, but over the fears and insecurities I had carried for years. The farm had chosen me, and I had chosen it back, and together we were unstoppable. Jessica's disbelief turned into quiet obsession. She started showing up more often, under the guise of casual visits, but her eyes betrayed her. She watched me with a sharp, calculating gaze, trying to uncover how I had transformed the farm and captured the admiration of everyone around us. Her questions were clipped, her tone polite but edged with something sharper: envy, frustration, and the tiniest hint of fear. One afternoon, she lingered near the vineyard while I was tending the vines, pretending to admire a cluster of grapes. "I don't understand," she said carefully. "How did you make this happen? It's like magic." I smiled, letting her words hang in the air. "Maybe it is," I said softly. "Or maybe it's just patience, care, and knowing where to look." She stiffened like she had expected some flaw, a secret shortcut she could expose, but there wasn't one. The farm, the vineyard, the wines, they were all the result of vision, effort, and a deep connection to the land she had never understood. Later that week, I hosted another tasting, this one larger, with local business owners, neighbors, and even a few journalists curious about the growing buzz. I poured my wines, subtly blending flavors designed to inspire confidence, joy, and even a sense of wonder. Jessica was there, standing stiffly at the edge, trying to mask her awe behind forced smiles. But the effects were impossible to hide. Even she softened, laughing at a story, her posture relaxing despite herself. I watched, feeling a quiet triumph. Jessica had mocked me, doubted me, and laughed at the idea of a falling apart farm. Now, she was powerless to stop the admiration and respect building around me. Her attempts at superiority were crumbling, not through confrontation, but through the undeniable charm and magic of the farm, and of me. By evening, as the gathering dispersed, I walked her to the edge of the vineyard. The sun cast long shadows across the rows of vines, the air heavy with the scent of grapes and possibility. "You see it now," I said, voice calm but firm. It wasn't broken, it was waiting. And waiting doesn't mean weakness, it means potential. She nodded slowly, eyes downcast. For once there was no laughter, no clever remark, just recognition and perhaps the first trace of humility. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need to gloat. The farm and the wines had already spoken. That night, I descended into the hidden vineyard, tasting a small glass of my newest creation, a deep amber wine that inspired warmth and introspection. I let the effects wash over me, a quiet celebration of the journey I had taken. Jessica might still resent, still envy, still wonder how she had misjudged me, but that didn't matter. The farm had chosen me, the community respected me, and I had reclaimed a power I hadn't even realized I possessed. The vines whispered under my fingers as I walked among them, alive and thriving, and I knew with certainty that nothing could touch what I had built. Jessica's laughter was gone, replaced by something far more potent, awe, and the recognition that she had underestimated a woman who refused to be defined by anyone else's expectations. The day of the harvest festival arrived, and the farm was alive with energy. Banners fluttered, tables overflowed with produce, and the scent of grape and earth filled the air. For the first time, the hidden vineyard was revealed, not in its entirety, but enough for people to glimpse the perfection beneath the surface. Word had spread about my wines, my vineyard, and now curiosity had brought the whole town to witness it for themselves. Jessica arrived, her steps hesitant, her usual confidence nowhere in sight. She had expected to witness failure, perhaps even smugly point out flaws. But the energy around me was undeniable. Guests greeted me with warmth, respect, and genuine excitement. I moved among them effortlessly, pouring glasses of wine, explaining the vine's history, and sharing anecdotes about the secret recipes that caused laughter, courage, sleep, or fleeting passion. The moment came when a reporter from the city's lifestyle magazine asked to taste a selection. I offered a flight of 3 wines, one that inspired calm, one that sparked joy, and one that awakened desire, not just for love, but for life itself. Each sip revealed subtle, extraordinary effects. Laughter bubbled, conversation flowed, and eyes sparkled with amazement. Even Jessica sipped cautiously, her expression shifting from doubt to astonishment as warmth and clarity spread through her. I watched quietly as the townspeople, neighbors, and journalists realized that the falling apart farm had been anything but. Every bottle, every vine, every drop of wine was a testament to care, vision, and the magic I had uncovered beneath the dust. Jessica's smirk never returned. Instead, she stood slightly apart, a silent witness to the respect, admiration, and quiet awe I commanded without a word of retaliation. Later, as the sun dipped behind the rolling hills, painting the vineyard in molten gold, I stood among the vines, inhaling the rich scent of earth and grapes. The farm hummed with life. The hidden vineyard thrived, and the wines gleamed like liquid sunlight. I poured myself a small glass of my signature blend and tasted victory, sweet, warm, and satisfying beyond any measure of revenge. Jessica approached me quietly, no mockery in her tone, only the faintest acknowledgement. I didn't see it, she admitted, voice low. I should have known better. I smiled, a calm, serene triumph in my gaze. You weren't meant to see it, I said. This farm, these wines, they were waiting for someone who could understand their value. Someone patient, observant, and unafraid. She nodded, her expression softening. For once, she wasn't laughing. For once, she understood the truth, and that was enough. As night fell, lanterns lit the vineyard, casting gentle light over the rows of vines. Guests lingered, savoring the wine, the moment, the story unfolding before them. And I realized, fully and finally, that I hadn't just inherited a farm. I had inherited power, respect, and the ability to shape the world around me. The woman who had laughed at me was now only a shadow in the background, while I, standing among my thriving vines, had become the living proof that patience, courage, and vision could turn even the harshest judgment into triumph. The farm whispered beneath my fingers. The bottles glimmered with promise, and I knew that this was just the beginning. The laughter had faded, the respect had grown, and I had claimed my place, not by force, but by understanding what was hidden and bringing it to life.